Hi, I'm Adam Natali, Director of SVA Theater at the School of Visual Arts. If you've never heard of SVA, we're a preeminent art and design college in New York City. Check the description below for more info. Since 2014, SVA Theater has hosted After School Special, the college's annual alumni film and animation festival. The festival is normally a series of free screenings followed by Q&As with alumni who are successfully working in the film industry. Even though we're unable to host in-person screenings this year, we're thrilled to be able to present interviews with over 25 alumni who've worked on a wide variety of feature films, television shows, documentaries, animated films, and more. Whether tonight's Q&A focuses on a particular series, film, or other work, we'll be sure to note it in the description below and will provide info on how to watch. All of our festival interviews will premiere here on YouTube during the week of September 21st. We're calling this our work from home edition of After School Special, and our guests are zooming in from all over the world, from Singapore and Germany to Canada and California. A full schedule of After School Special 2020 interviews can be found at svatheater.com, but all videos will remain on YouTube following their premieres. I hope you enjoyed tonight's interview, and if you're interested in viewing past After School Special Q&As, you can visit the School of Visual Arts' YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in, and fingers crossed, we hope to see you in person at an SVA Theater event in the near future. I'd like to welcome Quinnell Jones, a 2003 graduate of SVA's BFA film program. Quinnell has consistently worked as a cinematographer and camera operator since graduation. His DP credits include reality television series, including Marriage Rescue and I'd Kill for You, many short films, and multiple documentaries, including the award-winning Joe Frazier When the Smoke Clears, which he also produced. As a camera operator, Quinnell's resume is immense. He's worked on scores of films and TV shows, including Sex and the City, Flight of the Conchords, Law and Order, Gossip Girl, The Good Wife, America's Got Talent, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage. I see a trend there with the Marvel shows. The First Purge, Happy Death Day to You, and Jordan Peele's Oscar-winning Get Out. I can't wait to hear about his experience on that one. So you can check out a ton of his work. He's got a lot of videos on his personal website, QuinnellJones.com, which we'll put down in the YouTube information. So let's welcome Quinnell Jones. Hey, Quinnell, how you doing?
I'm very good. I'm happy to be here, Adam, definitely. And thanks for everyone for tuning in, listening to me speak.
Well, thank you for being here. I'd first like to start out by having you talk a little bit about your SVA experience while you were in school. You were in our undergraduate film program.
Yeah, personally, it was great because I was coming to a school because I transferred from Pride Institute. And I transferred to SVA because I felt the need to be around students who I felt that were better than me, frankly, just to be honest. I started doing this in high school. I had a television station in high school. So I had some knowledge of camera, directing, but more from a television news gathering sort of side. And then now when I was around SVA, especially freshman year, because I'm still friends, believe it or not, with a lot of people from my freshman year, I'm around people who have other creative thoughts. Wild creative thoughts. Some of the first time I went with some of my friends to an art gallery together, we went to the Whitney, to be specific, and seen a lot of films there at the Whitney. And it kind of changed my perspective about filmmaking and really show me that there's really there's something else out there that I need to start looking into. So I really started looking more, looking into fine art, looking at Duchamp, looking at Caravaggio, the Dutch masters, and others to really say, okay, I think I need to go back to school, so to speak, and start learning more. So. And it was that for the 4 years. It was, a lot of people challenged me. A lot of people challenged my ideas. You know what I mean? And just being truthful. So for me, it was that sort of experience. I know everyone have a different experience in college, but for me, it was great to be around people of like equal tiers, but of different backgrounds and able to challenge ideas, definitely for me.
That's great to hear. And your thesis film was actually really successful. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, public discourse. Brad Downey, director, and he's a fine artist. He's a painter sculptor. He came up with this idea. He saw a lot of art around the neighborhood, and he said, "You're a filmmaker. Let's work together." That was freshman year, So for 4 years throughout freshman, sophomore, junior, and up until senior year, we were filming a film. Now, we didn't know how to make a film, to be honest. This was like our first big documentary. When I look at the footage, I'm like, the cable, so a lot of stuff was new, especially in the earlier parts of filming. But obviously, the 4 years we got better. So it was an absolutely great experience because we was really in the culture of street art, the birth of it, really before really taking off. Now it's worldwide. A lot of the artists who are in the film now are worldwide artists. A high caliber artist. So we were able to see that growth, and it was a wonderful experience because SVA has a Dusty Film Festival, so we sold out there. It was standing room only, and then we had I don't think it was around anymore, but it was like this independent theater in New York called Two Boots Theater, way back when. Sold out there, standing room only. Then we was fortunate enough to go to London, ICA, which is their version of the MoMA, sold out there. So, so we was very fortunate to take this very small film that we did in college, use as our SVA thesis, obviously graduated from it, and it's still been, and it's still been distributed. And even last year, it was screened in France. And the film to this day has still been translated in other languages because it's represented as like the first real birth of street. Even though there are other street art films, and we know about Banksy and everything, but they came after us. All those films came after us, and it really started with a group of fine art kids. Loving fine art. And said, let's make a movie,
That's great. So did that pretty much launch your career? You've been working pretty consistently since graduation. So can you sort of tell us if that was the start and the trajectory of your career since then?
Well, the thing about filmmaking, I don't see one film launches a film career, it seems. And luckily SVA teachers was telling me that, it's not one film. I think I need about 50 of these. So right after that, that's when I went to grad school. I went to grad school in Manchester, England. I'm over there. I shot about 10 features there. Come back, join the union, the camera union, as a loader camera assistant. Work my way up. Still on the side, I got called a weekend warrior. Still shooting short film, independent films. Because I owned a Super 16 camera for 10 years during that time. So, and a Claire ACL, with my own small package. So, while I'm being a camera assistant and, working and trying to earn a living, I'm also on the weekends working independent side, shooting music videos, low budget commercials and everything of the sort. So I wouldn't say it's one film. It's more just a continuation of the art form. And eventually I feel all of it just builds up and people get to know you, and hopefully, your name gets around and people get to understand your art and what you're trying to say in many forms. So, but I wouldn't say it's one film, but without a shadow of a doubt, that film has helped without a doubt. People have seen that film, and to this day, people still talk about it, like I said. So I'm very proud to be a part of it, definitely.
And so how did you choose sort of cinematography and director of photography work as opposed to directing or producing? Did you track that way during SVA, or was that pretty much, what you decided when you came out of SVA and then out of Manchester?
Well, because I did start at high school, so I had some understanding of different roles and positions. So I was able to work as a producer and director in other forms in a television setting. And then I said, you know what, this camera thing is something I really want to really understand. That's when I came to SVA, because SVA has, you can specify in cinematography, right off the top. And, to me, that's something that I wanted to do, because I knew being a cinematographer, it's complex. I'm sorry. You have to learn lighting, camera, lenses. Back in the day, film stocks. Nowadays, digital. So there's a lot there, So that's what I want to do. But just as in school, I tried producing. I worked at a film distribution house. I've worked as a low budget director at times, just to see I've taken acting classes through SVA, just to see the full scope of the process, to understand that, yes, camera is what I want to do. You know what I mean? By going through that, producing is fun, I enjoy it, but not all parts of it. Directing, not all parts. Editing, a sleeper to me. So I mean, yeah, camera, yes, it has its downsides. I'm in the elements. It's raining, it's snowing, people screaming, no one cares about you. All that stuff is happening. But I'm in the middle of creating an image. So to me, that's where, even though there's all that process involved in the cinematography world, but you build in an image, and I enjoy that process.
That's great. You've worked, your resume is so extensive, but you've worked a lot on the television side. Is that because there are more television jobs in New York than there are films necessarily? Does it also have to do with who's doing the hiring? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, because I'm on the union side, I understand the numbers and stuff. New York used to be mostly a commercial town and an independent film town. Now, through the help with tax incentives and everything of the sort, and an expansion of producers saying New York as an opportunity to stay here and work consistently. So yeah, it become more of a TV town. There was tons and tons of, obviously before the pandemic, tons and tons and tons of television. Now, there are some features, but yes, Hollywood or California is more of the feature town. Now, Atlanta is growing as more of a feature town, or even New Orleans, Louisiana is more of a feature town. But it was because of just the city and the structure and the way jobs come to New York, there's a lot of television. So it just so happened to me. But I've worked on independent films and everything of sorts. But yeah, it's very much a television town here.
Sure. And you mentioned the union. I know you're very much involved with Local 600, the New York chapter of the International Cinematographers Guild. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement with that and how that's helped your career networking with within such an organization?
Yeah, without doubt. Yes, I'm part of the diversity committee, or has now changed to the inclusive committee, inclusion committee to be specific. So yes, I'm a part of that our national organization in regards to that, and we've been doing a lot of outreach to schools, community organizations to help get people of color and women within our union. We're building grant programs and everything of the sort. So yes, we've been doing this for a number of years, 10 years plus. And it's been great because I'm around other people who are like-minded like myself, who not only want to have a great career in the world of art and cinematography, but also give back. Also give back to the community. Also look, because people have done that to me. You know what I mean? So, so I'm around like-minded people who want to see the stability of the union stay strong, who want to see the growth of the union in many other ways. Even though, yes, there is a history in unions of being non-inclusive. But those days are hopefully changing. The leadership now, especially, and that's where it starts, the leadership now is much more inclusive and open to inclusion, definitely, It's a lot of work to be done, without a doubt. No doubt about it, a lot of work to be done, but the work is being done.
That's good to hear. Can we hear a little bit about your personal experience being a Black man in the industry and any challenges or issues you faced along the way?
Of course, as a Black man, I was just recently working on a project last week. And I was with my Karen PA who was driving me home. He wasn't Karen PA, he was a PA, I'm sorry. But he was driving me home, and, we was deep in New Jersey, so the ride was about an hour or more to drop me off. And we had a great conversation. But, he revealed to me that, this is his first time ever seeing a Black camera operator. In a number of years he's been. And, that isn't my first time having that comment of a lot of people just not seeing a Black camera operator. So just my presence alone is shifting the conversation. But also, when I walk on set, sometimes because can be an anomaly to some people, even when I'm working on those big budget jobs like Daredevil, they're still not used to seeing a Black camera operator. Even when I woke up to try to get breakfast, they're asking me, am I on the crew? I've been on certain jobs where, and they very rarely do this, but someone has asked me to see my union card. You know what I mean? And obviously I refuse. And I say, call the hall and tell them my name. And I'm sure there's not many Quinnells there. But so yes, there is plenty of pushback, in the union. Some people don't like to see the growth of inclusion. You know what I mean? They're opposition to this, but the world is changing. You know what I mean? Like it or not, it's changing. And like I said, luckily there's leadership. Obviously I've had conversations even on our union page where people are opposed to being diversity and inclusion. So much so that they filed a grievance, EEOC grievance with the government against diversity and inclusion within the union. Now they lost, and luckily the union lawyer stood up for our committee, but there are members who are working that hard against it. So there are other voices, So the work continues. The work continues without a doubt.
Well, I'm glad that you're a part of that committee, and I look forward to hearing more about it. And we, tend to do stuff with the ICG at SVA Theater at least once annually. So hopefully we can, potentially have the organization in to discuss this a bit more down the line once we're back to live events and maybe even a virtual event. So I'd love to switch over and focus on your work a bit. You sent us some photos from some recent shoots you've been on. So we're going to show those now, and we'll let you talk through those and tell us a little bit about those. And then I'll have a few more questions about some other shoots you've worked on.
This is Puerto Rico. That was my good B camera operator, Aguado. My Spanish is killing me. And Aguado. My Spanish is terrible. Sorry, Spanish-speaking people. And they were making fun of me it was 6 weeks on marriage rescue, so 6 weeks in Puerto Rico. My crew, it was 2 units, so my unit was pretty much, I would say, 85% Puerto Rican, including my other operator. So most of the time on headset, I hear Spanish. And then when I hear English, I'm like, oh, they must be talking to me. You know what I mean? So, but this right here is a shoot. We're in the middle of an ATV, dirt road. We have the back of the camera here. It's dusty. We're literally in the middle of a rainforest. we're trying to hold a buddy because it is like, it's ATV. So imagine going through all this terrain. And then you got the couple who's trying to we follow them on the other ATV. And as you can see, the camera lens and everything is just dusty. And then, my operator, Eduardo, he decided to pull out a camera and say, look at us. Because we were sweating and we were just in the worst, position. And just said, you got to love where we at. So this is one of the moments of like, it was hell for a camera, but great for us. And this one right here is on the pilot. This is in the middle of the shoot here with our camera assistant, Sammy, and the director in the background, Anki. And this is Tahiri Jose. And in the scene here that we are getting ready to shoot here. Yeah, so this was just a narrative pilot we did. This is back in Puerto Rico. This is some, because I shot the second unit as well. So I did all the second unit stuff for the show. And it was great because it just pretty much told me to say, Quinnell, go out and get what you get and make it look great. And I said, any other things? Does it say anything you want? So literally, they gave me two local Puerto Ricans, my camera assistant, and also a young producer. And she and he, they took us all over the country. I mean, like literally, I can unequivocally say I've been all over Puerto Rico, because I've been in parts of Puerto Rico. Even they said, I've never even been here. You know what I mean? So even they was like, wow. So this is old San Juan. So this is like a tourist area. So, but this is one of the beautiful locations of Puerto Rico. I mean, I've been all over that country. I was had the pleasure. So this is back with the pilot here. And this is with Jim Jones, the rapper. You know what I mean? So this is in the middle of setting up a shot. It was raining that day. And it was like, not like, was that misty rain? You know what I mean? That spits everywhere. Now, so we're trying to rush and keep all the actors in the car, and you don't see behind the trucks and the crew and makeup and hair and all that stuff. That's not in this picture, but it was just like rain, and just like that sort of rain that's like, oh. Now this is the crew photo from the Puerto Rican shot. This is this is my unit from, we have the director, my operators, sound persons, assistants. So yes, this the crew photo here. Great crew, wonderful crew. And this is set up a shot at the beach. It's tough to work, when you work in the beach, outdoors. You got the sand, you got the wind blowing. And then, when you're trying to make a movie, but it's beautiful, and so you have that contrast. So even our characters, they're like, everyone, the focus sometimes gets away. So this is one of them shots where we literally just waiting on everyone to show up, when you're waiting on talent. So this is the moment when everyone was waiting on talent.
And it's not like you can take a quick dip in the ocean, I guess.
No, it was just like, it was so terrible because I have complained about that more than several times. I'm like, I should be swimming right now, And this is obviously one of the shots where we had all four cameras. I say that because on the some of the scenes, where we need multi-camera, where they're like posed because it's an unscripted reality. So they're saying their vows to each other. They're being a little bit more intimate. So this is like one time you have to get everything in one go. So it's good stuff.
You look like the Terminator in that picture.
I know. I'm not exactly. They gave me plenty of nicknames there, So, but yeah, this is one of the handheld shots here because in the mist, even though, as you can see, the mist on the rain, even though it was raining, cinematically, it was beautiful. Because we have the glistening of the ground, the reflection of the lights and stuff like that. So this is one of those moments, once again, the crew is right behind the camera. This is in the middle of the night. And, I forgot, we lost the location. This is our second location because we did everything right. We had all of our permits, but right when we were about to film at our location that we're married, this is like 11 o'clock at night because we're trying to do a night scene. So we're trying to do everything at night without streetcars. So we're starting at night. The police comes up to us and say, unfortunately, you cannot film here because there was an incident earlier and there's police activity. And we're like, we're on the film, we got all of it, and we're like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, this is police activity. But what we can do is take you over there, and we found this location here. So we had like a private police officers watch us, which is on the other side of the picture, the entire shoot, because they felt bad for us not able to shoot at our original location. So actually, this is our made-up location. This is like taking place in probably like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning too. So this is late.
And what city was this shot in?
New York.
That's New York. Okay.
Yeah, this is Brooklyn, New York. So police always have police stuff. So I don't think it was a shooting or anything bad like that. But it just they always say police activity, go away. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So and this is just one because back on the marriage rescue show. A lot of handheld, pretty much, I would say 85% handheld, and we had to live on a long Zoom. So the easy rig, as you can see, it has become my best friend. So we're walking around with that particular rig. It's almost like not a steady cam, but it's a rig to help take some of the weight because that camera is about, with the long lens, all the follow focus and the monitors and the receivers, you're about 60 pounds, 70 pounds. Give it 14, 15-hour day, it's tiring.
Yeah. And is most unscripted television at this point handheld, or it varies?
It varies. Yes, I've done a lot. Mostly handheld, obviously, because they want to keep it in that, and usually the tripod is for interviews or exposition or whatever the case may be. So it depends on the show, but I work with plenty of unscripted where mostly tripod because they want to keep it a certain way. So unscripted, is the world of, is different, and you have to be able to adjust to what's going on. And here with this setup, we're setting up for an interview where literally after we did the ATV ride, we talked to the couples and say, how did it go? Was he great? Was he this or that? And this particular couple, I don't think I had the photo, but, we put them, the fellow up to a lie detector test and, we did the whole 9 yards. So it was like, one of them sort of, situations, definitely. And this is the lineup again. This is I guess as a lot of people see my face, my work face, because when I work, I'm on. And it is all about because there's so much to do on a film set, and a lot of people fail to realize that until they're on the set. Especially production design, dealing with actors and people and time, because you're always dealing with people like, oh, we need to go. Is this taking that long? So this face, this is my work face. You know what I mean? So that's how I like to call it, when I'm locked in. So and yes, this is once again 2 o'clock or so in the morning. And I could tell here this is when Jim Jones was giving me the look of, can we go? Because this scene here with Jose Tahiri Lees, he actually is a scene where he gets stuck up. So we had a whole, gun play. We had to practice, make sure the gun. But, this stuff takes a while to clear, safety. You know what I mean? We're dealing with rain. uh, actors that used to dealing with, and we go back to used to dealing with an unscripted world, because that's why I like those two, because this is a narrative world, but these two actors are used to working in an unscripted world, which is working at a different pace, fast. We got to go. This is While the narrative world, we like, oh, well, let's wait. Is the light right? I don't know. So it's trying to. So in this situation, I know Jim Jones was giving me a look of like, we need to speed this up. So because I was being a little bit too artsy for him, I guess. So this is good. Yeah, this is the other side.
And now he fell asleep. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's 2:00 in the morning. This is, and you see my AC. He's working hard, and you see that white piece of paper on the hood there. That's the script. So you see the directors on the other side trying to figure this out. You know what I mean? And the director, he's working hard trying to work with them. Because like I said, that's why I put these two pictures together, because even though I do unscripted, now when a narrative world, which is at a different pace, because I just finished another pilot working with some people who in an unscripted world, and they're just not used to that pace. They're used to like, go, 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 zoom lens, we done. And I'm like, no, that's not how film works. Where's the camera move? We should be, what lens are we on? Where's the lighting? It's a different pace. So it's just a different conversation, Yeah. But I have to say, and this is the continuation, but Tahiri, she was great. Jim Jones as well, but Tahiri, because she was one of the main protagonists in the show, and she was seen mostly throughout every scene, I would say pretty much. She was wonderful. Even though coming from an unscripted background, she was able to harness that narrative side of her. You know what I mean? So this is why we're in the middle of a scene, and she killed it. She did a great job, and I'm happy on how the show came out. We didn't get picked up, and we didn't make millions of dollars, but the look and the feel of it, and the camaraderie with the crew was wonderful, without a doubt. Yes, and this is my illustrious camera assistant Sammy working very hard for me, because very tight schedule there, and this continuation of that.
So even though the lineup didn't get picked up, is it available anywhere to watch, or?
Yeah, you could go, or because you could go on my YouTube page and website, and it's actually on my website, because just like pilots and not everything get picked up. We was competing over with the Jay-Z streaming service title, and he was looking at other projects, but that's how it goes. But for me as a creative, the project itself still looks great. The people on it involved, from hair, makeup, wardrobe, sound, I think we did a great piece.
And both of those pieces, the lineup and Marriage Rescue, you were DP on those. Marriage Rescue is available on Paramount Network. So, switching over to your camera op work, I know that people want to hear about your experience on Get Out. I mean, it's one of the biggest films in the past 20 years. So any thoughts? How long did you work on that project? What scene did you shoot? I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I was, because I did the New York unit. They shot mostly, I think, in Alabama or Louisiana. And this is my thing, my second or third time working with the DP, because I worked on the feature before. And he called me out the blue and said, we're doing New York unit upstate. Would you want to join us for, film Get Out with Jordan Peele? Now, when we got, because it's a small tier film, which is in the union scale, is a low budget film. No one working on that project. It was just another horror film, because I've done several. I I was more excited working with Jordan Peele. It was because I've loved his work obviously before, so the ability to work with him was like, oh, this is fucking awesome. And then this is awesome. So so we going on the bus uptown. We had great conversation. He's telling me about stuff. I meet the actors and talking to the DP and telling us what we're going to do. And it was great. We go up there because New York units, it was smaller days, a few days. But it was the ending, because I know Jordan Peele had the alternate ending that he discussed. Well, I'm the alternate ending. You know what I mean? So that within itself makes it cool to me. Yeah, I mean, to me, I feel like I'm like some special offshoot in the film. So I'm the ending. You know what I mean? So that's why I tell everybody, it's like, that's the first third, that's the middle, that's the end, that's me. And I tell it because, I didn't work on all the film, but I tell it, I'm so appreciative to be a part of it, even when, because when we did it, like I said, everyone was working hard, don't get me wrong, lovely. It was a great film. We moved on, and I was like, great, let's see what happens. So it does well at Sundance. I'm like, oh, cool, all right, good, And then you get more buzz, and you get more buzz, and it's like watching boiling water. You see one bubble, you're like, all right, I guess the water's getting hotter. Then all of a sudden, there's many bubbles. You're like, am I part of this? You know what I mean? So to the point where I've even myself, when Jordan accepted the Oscar, I was filming on my phone, watching on TV, saying, we together. You know what I mean? So even though I wasn't in my suit, I wasn't in the suit, but I'm like, the fact that I'm connected to that film, the fact that I was able to lens it, the fact that when I look at that film, I see my shots. You know what I mean? It does, without a doubt, it definitely put big smiles on my face. It's like, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm happy to be a part of it, without a doubt. So check out the ending.
Yeah, that's awesome. And well, I have a question. In that position, I'm guessing you're able to see at least a few script pages for your work, but do you see the whole script or not?
Yeah, I read the script.
Oh, okay.
I think every film I worked on, I read the script. Probably twice because, when you're working at this junior camera operator level, in my opinion, you got to come prepared. And how I come prepared is knowing the script to the best of my knowledge. So, yeah, I read the script, but once again, like any great story, you're like, oh, this is cool, but a lot of scripts I read and seen a film, and it's nothing like the script because they got a post-production and they did that and they put this on that side. So even for me working on the film, there's always that, oh, how is it going to turn out? And, oh, are they going to use my idea? Oh, they did use it, actually. Oh, actually, they did listen to me. You know what I mean? Or no, they didn't listen to me at all. You know what I mean? So that happens a lot too. Oh, no one cared about my opinion. Okay, good. You know what I mean? So, because it's a collaborative effort, and me, especially in the camera operator world, I'm more a support of the DP and his or her vision, and trying to facilitate that as much as possible, and also be true to the script.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about what you're working on now. If you're working, have you worked at all during the pandemic, either from home, or have there been a few shoots, or is anything coming up?
Well, so actual work, yes, I've been working. I've done a major shoot that I had to sign a NDA form for, so I cannot speak about it. I can even take pictures.
No problem. We understand.
Yeah. So, but yes, I have been working. Fortunately, Obviously, not as frequent as before because of the pandemic. And also, I was called to do a feature film down in Georgia that literally supposed to be there now, but was pushed to a later date because of COVID. So, yes, COVID is affecting production, the rate of when to start, because even though there are some production have started and some are finishing, but it's all in experimental phase. You know what I mean? Everyone's trying to figure this new world out. And it's not just us in Hollywood. You know, I would listen to other forums in South Africa. You know what I mean? So listen to how they're dealing with it. So I guess it's comforting to say it's not just us. You know, even though, you know, it's not good, but it's the world. The world is dealing with it without a doubt.
Are there any either films or TV shows you worked on, you know, in the past that are coming out later this year or in the next few months that you know of?
Yeah, I did do a movie. I can't think of his name now because I did do a movie with Jennifer Lopez. I was additional operator on that's supposed to come out. I was camera operator on a promo, but not the movie. I was on the camera operator on the new James Bond movie promo. But then what already came out is The Last OG. I did some additional camera operating on that TV show as well. So
Great.
those are some of the recent projects I've done, you know, in my camera. Because you're right, I do camera operator on the big union budget side, but I'm also an independent cinematographer. So it's all creative work.
Well, I'd love for you to give some advice to either students or just people in general who might be watching this who are interested in getting involved in the type of or getting the type of career that you have. Any thoughts to offer?
Yes, I would say first and foremost, don't give up. Doubt always sets in. Trust your creative eye and shoot every day without fail. Trust yourself and not the critics.
So, you know, I'm wondering, since SVA is going virtual this fall, one of the things we were actually like sort of talking about the other day was how do you teach something like cinematography that's so hands-on to students who are at home who might not have the equipment with them? It'd be interesting to hear your take on that.
Translate your cinematography word to still camera, because cinematography is just the technology.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to create an image. So to me, there's painters, there's photographers, there's my great painter Caravaggio. To me, even though, you know, because that's why even before I talked to you guys, I got up around 7 this morning to go shoot photography. So that's what I did this morning. You know what I mean? So I do this every day. And to me, and cinematography is just technology. To me, I'm creating an image. So if you're a young cinematographer and you're in a pandemic phase and the technology around you is limited, well, the ability to create an image is not, though.
That's great. Well, I just want to thank you. It was really great being able to see some of your work. And like I said, you have a ton of videos on your website, including the lineup, which I can't wait to watch now that I know all about it. So QuinnellJones.com, again, that'll be down in the YouTube information section of this. So I want to thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing your work. We're already seeing your work on screen. No matter what we watch, we know you've touched it in some way, I think. So congratulations on all your success, and thank you again for being here.
No, thank you, Adam and Vince. I really appreciate being a part of this. And big ups to SVA, my alum, and good luck to all the future alums of SVA.
Thanks, Quinnell.
All right, thank you. Really appreciate it.
I'd like to welcome Scott Ruderman, a cinematographer, producer, and camera operator who graduated from SVA's MFA Social Documentary program in 2016. He's worked with a wide variety of production companies, including Radical Media, Lion TV, and A&E on short films, features, and documentary series for shows on Netflix, Hulu, and HBO, among many other platforms. He's created promotional films for companies like AT&T and Penguin Random House, and has traveled the world covering a variety of content from media organizations, including Hub TV and Channel News Asia. You may have seen his work on Hulu's Taste the Nation, Netflix's Unwell, ID's Deadline Crime with Tamron Hall, and the documentaries Whiter Shade of Terror and Latter Day Jew. So I'd like to welcome Scott Ruderman. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
It's good to see you. Thanks for being here today. I'd like you to first start by telling us a little bit about your experience as a grad student in our social documentary film program.
Absolutely. I went to SocDoc from 2014 to 2016, primarily because I love documentaries. I started my career out as a photographer, but I really want to get more into movie making, filmmaking, but I also love telling stories. So that's why I went to SocDoc.
And while there, your thesis film, can you tell us a little bit about it? And I know it was pretty successful when you completed the program.
Absolutely. So my thesis film was called The Memory Keeper. And The Memory Keeper is kind of a slice of life type of film, I like to put it. But it followed a photographer that was documenting the community on City Island for over 50 years. And when someone passes away on the island that he's photographed, he would kind of put their picture up on this big wall that's in the middle of the island. And that fascinated me. So I kind of followed him around photographing different characters on the island. And as they passed away, I would go through that process. And that was primarily the focus of my thesis film that I did at SocDoc.
And so once you completed the program, it seems like you pretty seamlessly moved into becoming a director of photography and camera operator for short and feature documentaries, as well as several docuseries. So can you talk about sort of what launched your career from SVA into the industry?
Absolutely. So while at SVA, during my final year, I kind of started, working in the camera department as an assistant cameraman to some of my professors actually as well. And that kind of opened the gateway to my career in camera department. And from there, I kind of worked my way up. And what's interesting about documentary, being an assistant cameraman versus, kind of a narrative film, is that, the crews are much smaller. So you're learning a lot more. And you're working in environments where you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes the AC would do more than just, kind of doing media and charging batteries and pulling focus. Sometimes we would get thrown as, shooting second camera. And that's kind of what started my career as a camera operator and cinematographer.
And so, you mentioned to me that you generally work in at least a pair of camera operators. So can you talk about the dynamic between other camera ops when you're working in tandem?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the work I do requires two cameramen in the field, and it's usually a director of photography, as well as myself as a second, DP or camera operator. And a lot of it being in kind of the documentary environment is working alongside the DP and trying to choreograph what's happening, whether, we're on different lenses always, we're never at the same focal length because we're capturing, different aspects of the moment. So it's, being aware of what the DP is covering and making sure that you're either covering a reaction shot if it's multiple people. So, it's a lot of it is in intuition and feeling. You really don't have a shot list going in. You have an idea of what you want to get. But it's kind of a silent communication with who you're working with.
Now, docuseries have grown in popularity recently with all the major platforms, Hulu, Netflix, etc., launching these new docuseries like the ones you've worked on, Taste the Nation and Unwell. We have another interview with someone who was on The Pharmacist on Netflix. But you also work on features. Can you talk about the differences from your perspective between working on a docuseries versus working on a feature that might just be an hour and a half or 2 hours?
Yeah, so docuseries are definitely in trend. A lot of the docuseries I work are, each episode is under the same theme, but, maybe we're following around different characters and maybe a slightly different topic. On kind of the longer feature lengths, you're actually following characters that are evolving through a story, and you're spending a lot more time with them. So you're getting to kind of see transformation, which is really interesting, over filming them a period of time. And, in the beginning, it's always kind of an experiment of how you're going to film them and, how the relationship's going to work and how they're going to, warm up to the camera. And then it ends up being an amazing relationship by the end, and you feel so much more part of a story, someone's life. And that's just kind of the difference that I've experienced working from, episodics to feature docs.
And so you sent us a few on-set photos that I'd like to show from when you've traveled the world, both nationally and internationally for these shows. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your travels and work. Let's throw those up on screen now. So tell us a little bit about these.
Yes, this was in Arizona. We were working on, this was Taste the Nation. And I think this was one of our last evenings on this episode. I think we were there for about 7 days, and we were about to film a family coming together and enjoying a cookout. And we were waiting for the light to kind of get a little bit better, and we were just hanging out. This photograph was taken by the sound man, Dimitri. And we, because, we're on our feet the whole time, we wear these easy rigs to kind of get us through the day. I mean, we're hours and hours filming and capturing, because like I said, anything can happen in front of the camera, whether it's Padma's going to say something, Padma Lakshmi, or, someone at the table is going to say something. We need to be ready.
And I think this was the Native American episode, the American Indian, right? It was a great episode.
This was on Unwell. This was in Mongolia. And we were there filming breastfeeding culture. And the premises of Unwell, it goes into kind of like the alternative medicine world and kind of seeing if, for this episode, is drinking breast milk would help cure cancer or, prevent other illnesses. And here we were filming mainly Mongolian wrestlers that were breastfed until they were about 6 years old, because the idea was that they would be stronger fighters. This was I was a camera operator on this. This was on Deadline Crime, and we were filming a murder series in Hobbs, New Mexico. And this was shot one of the evenings. I think, again, it was one of our last evenings there. But this series, each episode was Tamron Hall was kind of reopening a case that was either solved or unsolved, and kind of questioning, the evolution of this murder case. Again, this is in Mongolia, and I was filming a man on his horse riding around, and then this Mongolian wrestler kind of walked all the way out into the field, and I just loved this shot with the mountains in the foreground, and I'm sorry, in the background, and him in kind of in the midground, and it just this vastness of, his world.
It's a great shot of you too.
This was on the Gullah Geechee episode in South Carolina on Taste the Nation. We were filming crab fishermen, and I believe the next photo, you'll see me filming a woman casting her net out to grab crab. Right here. And this was a fun shoot. This actually was my favorite episode on Taste the Nation. The food was amazing. The people were so nice. And, it was just one of those times where I actually was really happy filming what I was filming and connecting with the people in the community. So this was again on Taste the Nation, and we were filming, in Arizona, the Native American community. And this was a group of, young members that got together for us and would sing and dance. And it was, kind of, again, closing scene moment for that evening.
Yeah, it's a great series. And you mentioned specifically your favorite episode being the Gullah Geechee episode. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about why that particular one?
Yeah, I think, that one, speaks to a lot of a community that sometimes is, overlooked. And it's an old community, and especially being in, South Carolina, with everything that's happening today, it was an exploration of understanding, kind of the roots of what kind of built the South. And to me, it was a learning experience. And I was learning about, kind of these culture foods that I've never really heard of, and how, this community really built, the South in a way. It's really interesting.
And so you worked on every episode of Taste the Nation. And for those of you who may not have watched this series, it's on Hulu. It is a food series that documents cultures throughout the nation, whether they be cultures, especially, in terms of their food, that you may not be familiar with, but they're cultures that you surely are familiar with. And Padma Lakshmi of Top Chef is the host. It's a thoroughly interesting series. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about working on the series and what it was like working on all of the episodes and traveling throughout the country?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because each episode was very different. The food was very different, but it was really interesting to see how through food, indigenous communities and, the immigrants that arrived here have shaped, all these different places around the nation through food. It was really interesting, and how the food has not only become Americanized, but how has kind of, shaped that area of the community.
Sure. And so how did you get involved with the series? Were you working with a particular production company?
No, I was, the showrunner reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested to join this. And, I went in for a meeting and we talked, and I worked on the first few episodes, and they kept calling me back.
That's great. And so, like I said, you've traveled around the world. You've worked on all sorts of different types of documentaries. Is there one particular film or series that you worked on, or maybe one particular shoot that really stands out in your memory and holds a special place for you?
Yeah. There's definitely a few, but, right now I'm actually working on a documentary that I'm kind of doing myself. And I've been working on it for close to 2 years now. And I've been traveling across the nation, filming with type 1 diabetics like myself that are struggling to afford insulin. Because insulin prices in the United States has gone up so high. And spending a lot of time with them and realizing the struggle that they're going through. And it kind of hits home to realizing how fragile life is, and myself being a type 1 diabetic, and that I'm, kind of freelancing and still able to afford my health insurance, but, a lot of people in this country cannot, and the lengths they're going, some unfortunately have passed away to stay alive, and what's supposed to be the greatest country in the world has definitely shaped my mind and given me purpose to why I'm doing this. And it goes back to the idea of, I love being a DP, but I also love being a storyteller at the same time. So looking ahead in my future, it will always be both directing, producing, and as well as cinematography.
That's great to hear. And is this more of a film? Is this a series? What are you thinking for the end product?
A feature-length film. So
and do you have a timeline as to when you think this will be complete?
Absolutely. I'm aiming to complete it by next summer, because 2021 will be the 100th year of insulin discovery.
Okay. And so I assume you've been working on that during the pandemic in some capacity, whether you've been editing or processing or something like that?
Absolutely. I think, COVID has kind of, I like to put it, a blessing in disguise in some ways, where it's allowed me to kind of focus on my own film, and has allowed me to travel in the sense of visiting my characters and filming them more and more and spending more time with them, and also kind of showing, what they're going through during this time. And I think it's important. I think, what's happening right now is definitely something everyone should be documenting, because it's an important, time in around the world. So.
And so you're in Connecticut right now at your home, but for the past few weeks, you were up in Maine. Can you talk about what you were doing up there?
Yes, I was working for Vox Media. I was doing a shoot on, they have a show on Quibi called Answered, and the host is Cleo Abrams. And every episode, they, pick a topic that they will try to answer it in 6 minutes. It started during COVID. For example, do dogs, get COVID? Why or why not? And they would answer that in 6 minutes. And I was in Maine, and we did poison ivy, and kind of what plants have it, and how many people get it, and so it was 6 minutes about poison ivy.
And hopefully you didn't get poison ivy while you were shooting poison ivy. Well, that's great that you got to shoot. Seeing as film shoots are not yet up to the back to normal, can you talk about that shoot, and was it done any differently than a normal shoot would have been done in light of COVID?
Absolutely. I had to go through a PPE training. And, when you're on set, it's 6 feet apart, masks, gloves, we're taking readings for temperatures. I did get tested. It wasn't necessarily a requirement, but I did get tested prior to going. And again, what was different is usually we would be a bit bigger crew and maybe have a soundman on board. But this one, they didn't. They really just wanted a DP that can do sound. So I was able to do sound. And one thing that's interesting is, putting a lavalier mic on somebody, before I would go ahead and do it and apply it, but now it's kind of, I have to walk them through how to do it. And it's interesting, it kind of, I don't think it, it definitely makes, kind of the shoot longer, but it's quite nice not having such a big shoot. On Taste the Nation, we were 17 people at sometimes.
Yeah. And did the entire crew have to quarantine at any point, or it was just that the testing?
We were just two. It was me and a producer in the field.
Oh, okay.
Just two.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad it went well, and I'm glad you're doing okay. The other thing we haven't necessarily touched on, the other feature-length documentaries that you've worked on, and specifically Whiter Shade of Terror. I'd love to have you talk a little bit about that, as it's an important and very relevant topic right now.
Yeah, so Whiter Shade of Terror was a documentary TV segment that was done by MediaCorp, a company out in Singapore, and it was for Channel News Asia. And we were 2 weeks on the road here, going to different states and following different militia groups, as well as going to mosques, some radical mosques, and kind of questioning different militia leaders of their thoughts on the Muslim uprising and things like that. So it was definitely took a lot of preparation, a lot of pre-pro to make sure we were okay. In some areas we did have to wear bulletproof vests. I mean, going to militia I would say campsites and everything was a bit worrisome, but at the end of the day, everyone just wants to voice their opinion. So I think having cameras there, you think like, oh, am I going to be in their way? It's like, no, they love the camera because they want to voice their opinion. And I think it's important. And it's, again, why I like doing what I do.
Sure. I mean, I'm guessing it could have been a little scary now and then. Is that segment available to watch either on Channel News Asia or some other platform?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's on Channel News Asia's website, and it's called Whiter Shade of Terror. If you actually Google Whiter Shade of Terror, you could see the whole segment.
Great. And most of the other shows, you've worked on are available with, with membership to those platforms, or if you want to share it with your friends, you can do that. So, I'd love to conclude with any sort of advice you'd like to offer to students or to folks who are looking to get involved in this industry in general, especially as, working behind the scenes as a camera op. Is sort of like you framed it, you're always going to be a storyteller, and you are working and directing your own projects as well. But this is a really great way to not only build your resume, but get on these shoots. And then, like you said, you're the DP on this Quibi series, or at least this episode, and you're able to work on other projects as well. Can you offer advice to those who are looking to get into this industry?
Absolutely. I think primarily if you're looking to get into documentary, one of the best ways I found is definitely, becoming an AC, because becoming an AC is, in documentary, you're wearing multiple hats kind of, in the field, because you're with a small crew. And sometimes you're even the glue to the crew, meaning that you are working with producers and directors, you're thrown into creative discussions, but you're also constantly troubleshooting and how to make shots work with the DP. And usually when there's a second camera, the DP will have you operate second camera, and that's a great way to get your hands on and learn how to shoot in an environment like that. Going back to my sock doc days, really what helped me understand how I was shooting better was editing. Editing wasn't my, forte, and I couldn't be in a room for hours and hours editing, but editing my own films really helped me learn, how to shoot better, hold longer shots, you could tell, a moment through a stronger angle, where the light is. And a lot of that is reviewing your own work and to not be afraid for people to critique your work. I think, showing your work and having people critique your work is really important. So yeah, I think in terms of, get a camera and go and shoot.
Great. And just for acronyms, AC is additional camera, correct?
No, assistant cameraman.
Assistant cameraman. Okay. And then DP is director of photography, and SocDoc is social documentary program at SVA. No, it's not your fault. I just, there are surely some folks who are watching this who may or may not be in the industry. And I just want to make sure that they get all our lingo, because now they can work in the industry now that they have that down. So,
and watch documentaries, watch films. That's
great. Anything you'd like to recommend right now? Anything you're watching right now?
Right now, I'm actually going to watch a documentary that I've been wanting to see for a long time, Sweetgrass. It's an older documentary. And it's interesting because The whole documentary is about a sheep herder that's moving his sheep from one location to the other. So I'm really excited to watch that.
Great. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time, Scott. I'm glad you're working right now, and it sounds like it's an interesting shoot. The Quibi episode, is it up already? Or do we know when it's going to be up?
Yes, every week they're uploading. I think The Poison Ivy is going to air on Friday. It's on Quibi on the app, and it's called Answered. Great.
And Quibi, for those of you who don't know, because it doesn't necessarily look like it sounds, it's Quibi. That's the app. It's relatively new. And they have a lot of short episodics on there. So I encourage you to check that out. Please keep us abreast of your personal documentary. We'll direct people to your website in the description for this video, and they can keep an eye out for that. So we'll be looking for that. And again, I want to thank you, and congratulations on all your success.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott.
See ya.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this Q&A and hope you'll check out our other after-school special videos on the School of Visual Arts' YouTube channel. Thank you for your interest in and support of SVA and its alumni, and for your support of the arts in general. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be well.